Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. Paid family leave, is it a personal issue or a business issue? As legislators on Capitol Hill discuss President Biden's national parental, medical, and family leave program, increasingly business leaders are stepping up for the cause. On today's show, we'll speak with one such leader who has been a champion on the issue long before Biden took office. Joining me now is Chip Bergh. He's the CEO and president of Levi Strauss. He spent over 2 decades at Procter & Gamble and was served in the Army prior to that. He is an alum of Lafayette College. Chip, welcome back to LinkedIn News Live.
Hi, Caroline. It's great to be here with you today on this important subject.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And if you can believe it, I remember talking to you back in February of 2020 before this pandemic when you announced that you were going to have paid family leave to all your benefits eligible employees and your retail and your corporate workers. I think it was one of the last interviews I did in the office, if you can believe that. Take us back then. What was the conversation on this topic before this pandemic began?
Yeah, the timing of that too, if you think about it, was kind of very fortuitous. But, this is part of our employee value proposition. We offered paid parental leave starting back in 2016. So to any employee, male or female, they have a new child or adopt a child or bring a foster child into their family, we gave them 8 weeks of paid parental leave on top of maternity leave. And we really saw the return on investment of that. I remember when my children were born, I was back in the office the next day. And the opportunity to bond with a new child was something that was really, really important. About 50% of our employees fall in the sandwich generation where they're taking care of young children at home and also, potentially taking care of their parents or in-laws. And we saw the stress that this puts on families, and we decided the time was right for us to weigh in and offer paid family leave so that one of our employees could take care of a sick family member at home. And as you said, we put that into place in late January. You and I did the interview in early February. Next thing we knew, we were all in lockdown situation. And we had a number of employees during the pandemic that had critical family care that they needed to, take care of family members. And I can tell stories of people where this became a difference maker. Under normal circumstances, if this policy were not in effect, they would have had to leave the company. They would have had to resign, quit, so that they could stay at home and take care of their family. And that's a gut-wrenching decision for any family, not to mention the financial pressures that it puts on people. So, to have to make an emotional choice between taking care of your family or keeping your job and continuing to get your paycheck, nobody wants to have to face that. So,
absolutely. And Chip, that policy that you instituted at Levi's was revolutionary for the retail industry. It's very uncommon for retail workers to get the type of benefits that now benefits eligible employees get at Levi's. How come more of your retail peers aren't offering this, do you think?
Well, I think a lot of employers are concerned about the potential cost of this. And it was obviously, this is, at the end of the day, it's a business decision when all is said and done. It's a business decision and a decision around your employee value proposition. And as we kind of estimated what we thought this was going to cost us, what I can tell you is at the end of the day, and bear in mind, this is in the middle of a pandemic. At the end of the day, this cost us, in the first full year that we had the program in place, it cost us less than 10% of what we estimated. So I think a lot of employers are concerned about the potential cost of this. I think you have to, as an employer and as the decision maker here, ultimately the one who made the call on this, I think you have to consider the other side of the equation, the cost of not having a program like this in place, and the employees that you're going to lose when they're facing that, that crisis moment where they've got a very sick family member that they need to take care of, and they trade off their income, their job, and their career because of that, important critical family need. the cost of replacing an employee, best estimates are anywhere from as low as 1/2 of their annual compensation to as much as 2 times their annual compensation. And when I look at a couple of the people who I know took advantage of this program in the first year that we had it in place, because a couple of people had thanked me for it. When I take a look at the people who wound up staying with the company and the loyalty that they feel to the company after having been able to capitalize or take advantage of this benefit so that they could take care of a very sick family member, it's paid back well over what it's saved us, if you will, on the other side. And as I said, you can't even put a price tag on what it does to employee loyalty and engagement after experiencing, a very tough emotional issue, a
Right.
family health crisis, and knowing that the company has got their back. It's priceless.
You say that you can't put a price tag on it, but I'm wondering how we get the economics or the math into a place in which more employers are computing it the way that you are computing it, not just necessarily being afraid of the cost of the program, but thinking about employee retention, particularly the war on talent that we're facing right now in this competitive job market. Is there a way that you can start actually quantifying what the gains are for a program like this?
Well, I mean, again, back of the envelope, as I said, the payout is well above what the cost would have been to lose these employees. But putting a value on the loyalty, the commitment, the retention gains over time is probably a little bit tougher. This is also one of those things, you kind of feel it in your heart when all is said and done. It is about doing the right thing. I mean, let's step back from this. We are the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have paid parental leave. The only country in the world that doesn't have that. And one of the very, very few industrialized countries in the world that doesn't have paid family leave. And, so what makes everybody else so smart? And I personally think this isn't something that should need to be legislated. I think this is absolutely about doing the right thing for your people. And it is an investment, but it's an investment that does have a solid business case attached to it. And as I said, the cost to us in year one, in the middle of a pandemic, was 10% of what we had forecasted. And so, if you were to ask me, would I do this again? Absolutely, we would do it again.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the legislation that's on Capitol Hill right now. With 25% of U.S. firms not offering paid family leave, this is something that a lot of workers, millions of workers, are hoping gets passed. Where are we right now on the issue? I know that you have your ear to the ground on where we are with this bill. Do you think it's going to pass? And do you think it's going to look like what it's proposed to look like right now?
Well, it is in the final reconciliation package. I'm optimistic that this is going to happen. But we are at crunch time, and it sure wouldn't hurt for everybody who's listening to this conversation to take a moment and call their congressman or congresswoman and their senators and let them know we want to see this go through, because we are at crunch time right now. And dialing for dollars or sending a quick email to let your representatives know that this is important to you and you expect to see it go through sure wouldn't hurt at this moment in time.
And you partnered with Melinda Gates on a coalition of business leaders who are rallying around this issue, speaking out about this issue. Melinda shared a quote with us here at LinkedIn News this morning that I wanted to share with our audience. She said, "We stand at the very cusp of seizing a once-in-a-generation opportunity to provide paid family and medical leave for all workers. But as we all know, nothing is ever a guarantee in Washington, and there's a chance paid leave gets cut from the final budget package. That's what the time is now to unite and send a clear message to the White House and Congress. We cannot have a budget that leaves women behind. Paid leave must stay. If it's good for women, it's good for our families and our economy." What does it say about the state of the country, Chip, and the state of where we are on this issue if it does get cut out of this budget?
Well, I think it'll be a very sad day for America, to be honest with you. I think this is about our competitiveness as a country, and I think it is also about equality at the end of the day. Unfortunately, When families run into a situation where there's a sick one at home, the burden often falls on a woman. Unfortunately, it tends to be even a more severe situation in Black and Brown communities where workers don't have access to this type of policy. And so I think it'll be a really sad day for America if this doesn't wind up in the final legislation. And again, even as she said in her quote, and as I just said, we are at crunch time. This is a critical moment. And if this is important to you as a listener, it really would be helpful for you to let your representatives in Congress know that this is important to you. Send that signal. Your voice matters on this, and it will be heard.
Going back to when you instituted paid family leave at Levi's, was that a challenging thing to accomplish, particularly given that it's not something that your industry peers are offering right now, or was it something that was pretty easy to push through?
Well, we pride ourselves on leading, and we like to say when we lead, others follow. And this is an area, you touched on it. The labor market is very, very competitive today. We're headquartered in San Francisco. Yes, we're an apparel company, but a lot of people that work for Levi's, they work in functions that can go anywhere. They work in marketing, they work in finance, they work in sales, they work in IT. They can go work anywhere. And here in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, they can go work for startups that are throwing lots of stock at them, or tech companies that are growing like crazy. And so the war for talent is real. And for us, this is a big part about our overall value proposition to our employees. And we believe that first and foremost, the values of our company and what we stand for and who we are matters the most. But then things like this really do make a difference. And so it's part of what we believe it takes to be competitive. It did not take a lot to sell this idea. We estimated the cost, and as I said, in reality, it's turned out to be much less than what we expected it to be. And as I said, I know it's making a difference in the lives of some of our employees who otherwise would have had to quit, and many of them would have been significant losses to us as a company.
Well, Chip, I'm seeing a lot of people in the stream agreeing with you right now. Jacqueline says, it costs an establishment way more when employees are not cared for well. I promise you, you lose in every way. And we have a comment here from Gail who says, hardly anyone considers the true cost of losing a great employee who has been with the organization for a while. So Jacqueline and Gail, thanks for joining us. We also have some hellos, Chip, from Nancy in Las Vegas, Rodney from Minnesota, and Kelly from New York. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live. I'm here with Chip Bergh. He's the CEO and president of Levi Strauss. He's been there for over a decade. That makes me feel old, Chip. I don't know about you, but that's amazing.
Yeah, it has aged me a little bit, that's for sure.
Well, speaking of Levi Strauss, the company just has a rich history of speaking out on important issues and not standing by when it comes to things that, may turn off some customers. Let's talk a little bit about some of those issues. I want to talk about voting rights and why that's something that you in particular have taken a stand on. And why is it that this is something that is politicized? Why can't it be something that more business leaders are speaking out about?
Well, unfortunately, we are in a moment in time here in this country where everything is divisive and everything is political. Frankly, I don't think this should be divisive. This is all about democracy at the end of the day. I like to say democracy only works when people who legitimately can vote can vote. And the sad reality is that in reaction to the last presidential election and the conspiracy theories around the election being stolen, which have been patently proven false time and time again, including most recently a Republican-driven recount in Arizona, which concluded that the count was correct. In reaction to that, we're seeing laws, over 350 laws in 47 plus states around the country intending to limit voter access. And that just, frankly, to me, it is really bad for democracy. At the end of the day, democracy is all about every voter having an opportunity to make their vote counted. And democracy only works when that is happening. We've been involved in driving voters' turnout to the polls since the 2018 election, the midterm elections in 2018. And we got involved in a very nonpartisan way. This is not trying to drive results, left or right. This is just about encouraging people to exercise their civic responsibility, their civic duty, I would say, to vote. And so we were very active in getting consumers, people to register for the vote and to get out to vote. And we carried that through in 2020 as well. We partnered with Patagonia to encourage other employers around the United States to give their employees time off to vote on election day. We had over 1,000 companies from every state in America giving over 10 million employees time off to vote on election day. And again, we're one of the only democracies in the world where election day happens on a Tuesday. That is not a federal holiday. It happens on a work day. And, I might be able to take off for an hour or 2 hours to walk up the street to go to my polling place to vote. But there are so many Americans who, because of their job, they don't have an opportunity to go to the polls. And so we had this massive effort. Again, over 1,000 companies joined us in this, 10 million plus employees impacted, giving them time off to vote on election day. And so elections and voting have been really, really an important thing for us for the last 3 or 4 years, and will continue to be. And we're going to continue to stand up for voting rights around the country.
Chip, you mentioned how just the politicized environment that we find ourselves right now in this country has changed your role as a CEO. But I also wanted to ask you about the pandemic and how the pandemic has shifted the way that you think about leadership. And to that end, your peers, in terms of what you're seeing from them, and for those who may seem still afraid to talk out on some of these issues.
Well, the pandemic has had a lot of dark spots for sure. We're still working remotely from home, but there have been some bright spots as well. I mean, being able to do Zoom or Microsoft Teams calls with other CEOs, I would say I've had more direct contact with more CEOs over the last 18 months, in part because we were all flying blind in the pandemic, and just being able to understand, what are you doing on this particular issue? I mean, for the first time in 40 plus years of being in business, I was running the business with no forecast. I mean, I told the board back a little bit more than a year ago, when the pandemic really started to impact us. And remember, we're a retailer. We had stores closed globally for 10 out of 13 weeks in our second quarter last year. Our business was down 67%. In a normal quarter, we would do $1.5 billion of revenue. We did less than $500 million of revenue in our second quarter last year. And we had no visibility to how long this was going to go on. So I told my board, we've got 3 scenarios: high, medium, and low. And that's how we're going to run the business until this thing gets a little bit clearer. And still to this day, the pandemic is having an impact on our business. So I think many CEOs are beginning to realize that the job of the CEO goes way beyond just delivering the bottom line and hitting your numbers for Wall Street. If nothing else, we've been doing meetings by Zoom, and we're in our employees' house. We're in their kitchen. We're in their family room. We're sometimes in their bedroom doing meetings with folks. And you begin to experience their full life. In the early days of the pandemic, when a mom or a dad was trying to help their kindergarten Zoom into school, you begin to, it definitely required a different set of skills to lead in the early days of the pandemic. Much greater empathy, much greater understanding of the realities that our employees were dealing with. And it was fortuitous that we announced our paid family leave just as the pandemic was really beginning to have an impact. And, and then understanding what families were going through during the pandemic, what our employees are going through, the mental health consequences for many of our folks, single people living alone, not being able to go outside during lockdown for weeks at a time. It was hard on people. And so just, developing the empathy and then putting programs in place to address that. So we declared every Friday a no meeting day during the pandemic because we're all zoomed out, Zoom fatigue or Microsoft Teams fatigue. We gave the last Friday of every month as a corporate holiday during the pandemic because people needed some mental break. And so we continue to do that. So benchmarking and talking best practices with other CEOs during this period of time has been really, really helpful for me. And again, I think there are places where we've been leading, and I've been trying to encourage my peers, both inside the industry and beyond, with some of the practices that we've put in place to encourage them to look at them and consider adopting them for themselves.
And you mentioned all the practices and policies that Levi's tries to lead on. You're trying to lead the way back into the office in San Francisco for Levi's. Is that a controversial topic right now? And why are you making people, or not making, I should say, why are you opening the offices again for workers?
Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, we think it's very safe here in San Francisco. This city has been probably more aggressive, and the overall Bay Area has been probably more aggressive through the pandemic with practices to keep people safe. The vaccination rate in San Francisco is around 85% now. So we're confident we can open the office and that people can be safe in the office. At this point in time, we're making it mandatory for employees to be vaccinated when they return to the office, unless they've got a medical or a religious exemption approved by HR and legal. But we're confident we can keep people safe. There's still a mask requirement if you're going to be indoors in San Francisco. So that's reason number one. We're confident we can do it safely. Reason number two is we are a retailer. Our retail stores have been open pretty much through the pandemic, and we're about to head into the busiest time of year for retail. And our headquarters, we exist to support our retail stores and to support our markets around the world. And as I said, this is a busy time for us. And while we've been very, very successful, and we will emerge from the pandemic a much stronger company, we've been very successful with many of our folks working remotely through much of the pandemic. I think we've suffered a little bit too in terms of teamwork and collaboration and innovation overall. And so I think, you just at some point you have to pick a spot and say it's time. And, we're going to do it with sensitivity. We know that there are going to be people who have special needs at home, either immunocompromised folks at home or perhaps children, that aren't vaccinated, and we'll, work with them and try to be as accommodating as possible. But as we come back to the office, we've also said the work will drive the where. And so some work can clearly continue to be done remotely, but there is some work that really benefits from in-person work, and we're going to try to get back in person for that kind of work starting in the end of October.
Well, Chip, you have some fans in the stream right now. Tatiana is saying companies like Levi Strauss and leaders like Chip are certainly helping to pave the way and lead the conversation. And Vanessa and Jordan said they both called their state senators and representatives in support of paid family leave. Chip, it is always a pleasure. As much as I enjoy interviewing you from the attic of your house, I hope the next time that we do this, it is in person. I think this is the third time that we've done this, and I think that that's enough. Maybe, hopefully, with your return to office in mind, we can meet up in person soon.
That's right. I can't wait for that, Caroline. It's been good to see you. Thank you very much for the time, and hopefully I will see you in person real soon.
Thanks, Chip. That was Chip Bergh. He's the CEO of Levi Strauss, breaking down for us why it's important for company leaders like himself to speak out on issues like paid family leave. All right. If you want to continue this conversation, be sure to check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed. Or if you're in mobile, you can click into the search box. On Thursday, I'll be back with you at 3 Eastern for a conversation about Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're celebrating one of the few Hispanic CEOs in the S&P 500, Mauricio Gutierrez, CEO of energy company NRG. We talked about the importance of mentorship and diversity in the workplace. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thanks so much for joining us.